So, if you ever wanted to know anything about the Indian economy but were afraid to ask, now's your chance. Today is also a good day to sort out your questions and doubts because the latest economic survey has just been published. I must say, I've produced one of these before, many years ago, but this one is really an excellent detailed document in 2 volumes, which is unusual. And it does tackle a large number of key issues in the economy, and there are a lot of questions about the Indian economy and where it's going. It also has a headline which is probably the best news India has heard probably ever, well, since independence at least. It says India will grow at 8% next year and then hit double digits, that's cross 10%. India crossing 10%. When I did that survey, we were lucky if we were talking about 4.5%. That was like a dream. 10%, well, it sounds like India, the new India sounds like the old China, which kind of got out of its poverty by growing at 10% for many, many years consecutively. So we will be asking in this show, is this real or is it a dream? And if 8% or 10% is going to be realized, a lot of work has to be done, obviously, as the Indian economy at the moment is not exactly booming right now. So lots of questions, and there could not be, honestly, a better person and a better team to tell us all whether India is bouncing back or if we are stuck at some low-level equilibrium. We've got Arvind Subramanian, the Chief Economic Adviser to the Indian government, one of the brightest minds, not only in the government, but one of the most respected economists globally. In fact, the well-known magazine Foreign Policy has named Arvind Subramanian as one of the top 100 global thinkers. Thanks very much for joining us. And all I can say, this is just a dream for an economist. 8%, 10% for India. Wow. I mean, when I used to have Raj Krishna as our professor, he used to talk Hindu rate of growth, 3%. Yeah. And you got a great team. Youngsters. Yep. I mean, you're pretty young. I won't go into, let's not go into age here. Yeah. So can you introduce them?
Yeah. So this is what we call Team CEA. Not everyone is here, but you know, apart from everyone else in the division who did it. Rohit Lamba on my extreme right. Rangeet Ghosh to my immediate right, Syed Zubair Naqvi to my left or to your left, and Kapil Patidar also on the other side. So these are 4 amongst.
I just have one complaint about it. Why are they in the government? They should be doing some e-commerce, some new venture. What's the
Prannoy, there's still hope in government. This is
yes, okay.
We need good government.
Well, is it all about hope? What is your growth forecast? That's what I first want to tackle.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at what the economic survey says in our first graphic. It says the growth forecast for next year is 8%. That's the fastest in the world. Is it really 8%? Or is it 5.8%, which is not the fastest? Why am I saying 5.8? Because you revised from 4.7 to 6.9, that's 2.2. If I deduct 2.2 from 8%, is it 5.8 by the old scale and 8% by this new, the world looks at a little skeptically, the new data? Because we changed the data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is better? What is happening?
So, Prannoy, that's a question on everyone's minds, right?
Right.
Now, a few points need to be said here. First of all, we now don't have a choice in terms of what numbers we use.
Correct.
Right? Because now the CSO produces only one number, right. And that number said for last year or the coming 2014-15 that growth is going to be 7.4%. Right.
Correct.
Now,
by the new
data. The new data. So I think it's important to remember to point out that the CSO, independent, unimpeachable integrity, started this exercise and has really moved us up to international standards in terms of doing this stuff. Right. Top notch. But it also happens to be the case. So the process is impeccable.
Yes.
But the question is the outcome,
right.
Which is, the really puzzling number was for 2013-14.
Yes.
Which saw a huge jump.
4.7 to 6.9.
Yeah, exactly.
That's almost a 50% increase in growth.
And at a time when, 13-14 was our crisis year.
Yeah, yeah.
So that number is what I've called a puzzle. And I think, many people are trying to still understand that. We try to shed some light in the survey. But the point is that, 2014-15 is 6.9 to 7.4. So we have to project on the back of 7.4.
Correct.
And what we have said is going forward, it's going to increase, and the increase is the operative word, by between 0.6 and 1%. It's a range, it's not an exact science. So that's why our range actually is between 8, and to make it even more unreal, it's between 8 and 8.5. That's our forecast.
Why not 8.45?
No. Yeah, 8. So range, and in Indian government they take things to 2 decimal places. The first thing I said when I came was no more than 1 decimal place.
God bless you. I'm doing that on television all the time as well.
No spurious exactitude on my watch. So I think that's so it's 8 to 8.5, which represents an increase of about between 0.6 and 1%.
That's a wonderful, it's the fastest in the world. It's wonderful. It makes you feel so good. So we want to believe it.
Yeah, it makes, but very clear we say in the survey is that 7.4 for last year, 7.9 for last year, 7.4, sorry, for 2014-15, should be interpreted with caution because it doesn't gel or it's not completely reconcilable with
the real situation.
With everything else that's going in the economy.
Slow the index of industrial production is
credit is lower, tax receipts, but it is a recovering economy.
On the other hand, let me tell you, the IIP, the index of is a terrible database. Now that has to be revamped, just like inflation had to be revamped. And I agree with you. I have a lot of faith in the CSO, huge amount, and they are talented people, and talented to the point they're not as talented enough to fiddle data consistently. No. So it's not fiddled.
They're not fiddled.
But they haven't, it came out maybe in a bit of a rush. They should have explained the difference. And when you see a change from 4.7, you should expect 0.23 difference, not 2.2.
And if you hone in on where the difference is, all the or the major differences between new and the old series is in manufacturing. I mean, and there's a chart in the survey.
Is it because of the old series, which was an appalling method? I mean, let's face it, not global standards. We left out a lot of fast-growing industries. We left out maybe substantial bits of IT and...
Prannoy, you see, one thing we do understand is that manufacturing, there's been a level jump. It was around 13, 14, they bumped it up to 18%, the share of manufacturing in GDP.
Share, that is a 5% increase in share.
About 4. Yeah. But that we understand. The reason that's happened is because earlier, they would measure manufacturing at the level of the plant. So you went to a plant, you said, oh, it's manufacturing plant, it's manufacturing. But now what they measure it at is at the level of headquarters. So headquarters means plants plus headquarters is manufacturing. Earlier, headquarters used to be services. Now, whether that's right or wrong, but at least we understand it. But what I don't understand is why the growth rate of manufacturing is so different between the new series and the old. The level jump I understand.
Exactly. Actually, that's what, in fact, for me, that was the only reassuring part. That, okay, a 1 level jump in the first year, redefining the data. Then you're talking about new data, new weights, and a new series. And changes should not be that different.
Exactly. Your intuition is exactly right.
It's like, say, the black economy. That you say, oh, we don't include the black economy, but that's a level.
Exactly.
So if the black economy is growing the same as the white economy, the growth rate is going to be the same, the level is going to, so is it, I mean, how much confidence do you put in these figures now?
No, I think, there's, the way I would put it neutrally is that there is a margin of error, the confidence levels in these things are, need to be revisited. We're not as confident perhaps as, because of what is going on with the other data. But coming back to your question though, 8 or 5.8, fastest, second fastest, the thing is that if we're a recovering economy and things are going in the right direction, next year we should see an even further improvement relative to this year because at least 3 or 4 factors are moving in our favor. Oil prices are down.
Yes.
Correct? Yes. Monetary policy has to be, it's going to be easier because inflation is
down. Yes.
Reforms have been undertaken. There's to be some cumulative impact. And the monsoon, according to the Met Office, is that it's going to be better next year.
Well, it's a bit early for the monsoon forecast now, but still.
So these are 4 things.
You can't have so many years in a row.
Yeah, exactly. And so I have more confidence in saying that the growth rate will be 0.5 to 1% more than this year on the strength of all this. Whether that adds up to 8 or 6 or 7 is a bit more open question. But even 5.8, Prannoy, by international standards is amongst the highest. You know,
right.
I think among the major economies, apart from China, I don't think 5.8 is beaten.
But I really do feel, just to close this issue, that some paper has to come out very soon in the next 3 months, resolving this, not only for all of us, but for the international community.
Absolutely.
Just tying up the
and you know, I
making
think
it consistent.
No, and just for us, I think what's key is that I want to be able to know what the difference,
yes.
what aspect of the new methodology or data
can be attributed.
Can be attributed to that.
Yes,
exactly.
yes, and it should be a time series going backwards. Not just 2 years. You know,
exactly.
so that was. So if that's coming out in the next 3 months, it'll be wonderful for everybody and for global confidence. Now, to get to 8% or 7, whatever it is, you still have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
One of the issues, if we look at our next graphic, is that India's investment has stalled. The investment growth has stalled. If we look at it over time, we can bring up that graphic now. It's in fact, really since about 2007, it's just flat.
Yeah.
You know, it really went almost up to 40%, just under 40% of GDP, and it's now at about 33, 34% of GDP.
Yeah.
And if we look at our next graphic, it's really very clear one of the reasons why this is happening is because new projects have been stalled.
Yeah.
And they need a kickstart. Look at that. In 2005, 2006, new projects kept growing, more and more new projects kept being initiated. 2008, about 30%. And then those 3 years were great, then the big crash came, and then we just never recovered.
Yeah.
New projects are now down to around about 5–6% as a percentage of GDP. Look at that decline.
Yeah.
How are you going to give this kickstart?
Yeah, so I think one has to look at investment first, private and public.
Yes.
So, you know, Rohit here wrote the chapter on the you know, analyzing these stalled projects, because stalled projects gives us a window into private investment.
Correct.
Right? And what that's showing is that the rate of...
sorry, not into public? There must be many
mostly. I'll tell you why I'm saying that, right?
Right?
Because most of the stalled projects are in the private sector. About 85 to 88% of stalled projects are private sector. That's one. So only about 12% in the public sector, one. Second, surprisingly, we thought, or at least I thought, that most of these stalled projects were in infrastructure. It turns out now in the last 3 years, if you accumulated, manufacturing is actually slightly higher in terms of stalled projects. Third, and this is I think really interesting, is that the reasons why projects have been stalled in the private sector are quite different from in the public sector. In the private sector, it's basically because, you know, of, let's call it, irrational exuberance. People went in saying they're going to invest, growth rate's going to be very high,
coming,
and then the market conditions change.
Right.
Whereas
and then they got overcautious.
And in the public sector, it's much more because of inability to obtain regulatory clearances. But what is, but it's also the case that now we seem to have seen the worst behind, put the worst behind us, because the rate of stalling is actually bottomed out, and we're seeing some revival. But private investment, the big lesson from this is private investment going forward is going to be relatively weak, because remember, this is consistent with data which shows that the corporate balance sheets are really weak. Profitability is down, debt is high, and
they're stretched. The private sector is stretched.
And correspondingly, the banking system has a lot of stressed assets. So the combination of corporate and banking sector means that the financing is going to be difficult, the investment is going to be difficult.
That's what I liked in the way you put it in your survey and in your press conference afterwards. The short run, public sector has to come in, give the kickstart, but the long run, you can't depend on the public sector
alone. Yeah. So in the long run, because in the graphic that you put out when you showed investment going up, what was really amazing is that private investment was the big growth, and it's been the biggest drop. Right. But public investment also follows the same pattern, but at a lower rate.
Can I just ask Rohit? In fact,
yeah, of course.
We're really talking about both stalled but also new projects. Is it also true that the government has not been initiating new projects rather than just stalled projects? Not enough new projects, down to less than 10% now.
That's true, but you know, as Arvind was saying, a big chunk of it has been, you know, both with new and stalled the private sector, and it really has to be tied down to just the dependence, you know, what we call in our survey the balance sheet syndrome with Indian characteristics. If you just look at the corporate balance sheets, I mean, you know, it will resolve your your puzzle, so to say, as to why it's going down. They just don't have the capacity. And if you talk to anyone in Bombay, you know that the banks are just don't have the capacity, and we are unwilling.
So this has to change, and what you're saying in the short run,
public investment,
the government, this big bang reform projects, new things will be pushing it.
So while we distribute the pain, amongst the stall projects, the government has to step in sort of and
So Prannoy, the interesting thing is that because we'll talk about public sector in a moment, but the reason why it's proving difficult to get out of this mess is that we don't have good exit procedures, So in a sense, the problem, you see, everyone overinvests, right? That's irrational exuberance is as old as history, But once you get into it, how do you get out?
India is easy to get, not easy, relatively easy to get in, but difficult to get out.
Exactly. Exit is the problem, and for capitalism, exit is more important, important as entry. And in Western systems, you have legal procedures. Here, our legal mechanism institutions are relatively weak. So as Rohit was saying, what you basically need is you have 4 sets of actors. You have the equity guy, the promoter, the banker who made the money, the consumer who gets the tariff, and the taxpayer. Pain has to be shared between these 4. Normally, legal procedures do it. But my view is that, I think our view in the survey is that India may need to think a bit creatively on this. I think we need quasi-political processes for sorting it out. Yeah, and maybe independent. For example, Vinayak Chatterjee of Feedback, Ventures says we need maybe an independent renegotiation commission, something with impeccable integrity. Too bad.
Another commission. We had BIFR, and everything got stuck there for years.
But you see, but the legal procedures we have are not working fast enough. So it's we need creative solutions. So
this is one of the issues that we have to kick manufacturing and restart projects, and you're saying that the public sector, so it's just basically just looking at the broader picture. I don't want you to give obviously any details of what's coming in the budget, but the broader picture of the budget is go for growth by big bang reform, big bang projects to kickstart the private sector as well. It's not really looking at inflation and controlling money supply. Is it quantitative easing in India?
No. I think we have to be careful.
You don't have to answer it.
No. I'm not. I will answer it. Actually, it is answerable. I think the choice, I think, going forward is not either or. I think we can do, and that's the point of the survey. We can do more public investment. We don't. Inflation can continue coming down, and we can still maintain fiscal discipline going forward. All 3 are compatible.
You can pull the other leg.
No, I'll explain that to you.
In detail after you've relaxed a bit, after the budget. Just staying on the issue of, we talked about investment, now just about manufacturing output. It's totally different kind of animal. Even what you've got, are they producing enough? We've seen the auto sector in deep trouble, making losses from such optimism earlier. The Japanese are now worrying about their investments in India. If you look at manufacturing India, how much do we rely on it? Just let's have a look at the manufacturing sector as a whole. Now in China it's 33% of GDP, Thailand 30%. If we move on to in Indonesia and Malaysia, it's about 24-25%. And in India, it's 13% by the old method. You just mentioned 17% now.
17.5, 18%.
So even 17, there are two ways to look at it. That we can't put all our eggs in that basket because it's not the major sector in the economy. On the other hand, does it mean it's a lot of potential to grow? It should hit 25-30% because that's the kind of norm of economies around us. So which way are you putting a lot of reliance on agriculture, on industry for growth?
I think
investment and output. Sorry.
I think that's a tough question. We have a whole chapter on this in the survey, right? I think why is manufacturing important, right? I mean, I think it's important because historically it's been the engine of transformation, right? And it's been an engine of transformation especially in the Asian economies, especially because you begin by doing unskilled labor. So what happens is that you could do manufacturing, it absorbs a lot of resources, wages go up, standards of living improve in line with productivity growth. It's very dynamic, right? Now, the Indian experience has been very different on this. We, as you showed, we never did a lot of manufacturing, and the dirty secret is that even what we've done, a lot of it is skilled, and very little of it is actually registered manufacturing. Most of it is unregistered.
Yes, yes.
Unregistered manufacturing is not a transformational sector. It's low productivity. What we need is unskilled intensive, high productivity, dynamic manufacturing.
Right.
We've had very little of that.
Which you see a lot in China.
Which you see a lot, you've seen a lot in China and all the other East Asian countries.
All the other East Asian, yes.
So I think we need to think.
There is a model to follow. We can do it if we get our act together.
But I think probably the question is that, yes, that's the model, but are we unique? After all, remember,
I don't think we eat McDonald's, we eat Domino pizzas, we just eat anything. We are like any other guy in the world. No, Prannoy, we think we're unique.
No, I think it's unique. I mean unique not in a kind of, we're so great way, but just as in a descriptive way, way. Because our pattern of development has relied, the boom phase was associated with services and skill-intensive services, right? So the bigger question is that, we need to do manufacturing, unskilled manufacturing, because the thing, but do we also need to think about other transformational sectors? And if so, like services, like lots of these services, but what registered manufacturing and services share in common is they're high productivity, they're dynamic, but they use skills, and we need to unskill. So I think that's why I think the Prime Minister's Skill India program, I think it needs to actually get the same level of prominence as the Make in India, because I think these things go together. Make in India to get the unskilled manufacturing, Skill India to get services, skill intensive manufacturing, and together. So it's again not an either or. You need to do both and go forward.
But in your kind of strategic thinking, we're at say it's 13%, 17%. Okay, we're still almost half what we could be. 5 years from now, would you like to see that hit 25%, or would you like some other sector rather than manufacturing take India forward?
No, I mean, ideally,
in your strategy.
Yeah, in this strategy, I mean, ideally, that number should go back up to 25, 30 with unskilled labor, so drawing a lot of resources. Now, the question is that in history, has that happened when, countries that have actually seen a decline in manufacturing and then revved back up to this? I haven't seen that many examples, so it would be unprecedented. We should try for it, but I think we should also try and develop lots of other complementary sectors.
See, one of the things you do mention very interestingly in the survey is the e-commerce sector, and that it can grow rapidly. In fact, a lot of people are saying, I think I read a report, is going to be $150 billion by 2018. Of course, it's anybody's guess, but that's the kind of scale that people, and while people look at like when the computers came in, it's going to replace jobs, but there is the other side to it. There's the story of a ordinary 55-year-old housewife in Surat. She just been producing saris all her life. And she would go to the wholesalers and beg them, and they'd say, okay, wahan rakho. And she said, can you make it a little more obvious? I'd like to sell. And she sold, 10, 20 lakhs a year. She now puts her saris on these Flipkart, Snapdeal, Amazon. She's doing 20 crores a year. So it is employment generating, because all these small people who couldn't get access to a market because of all the hierarchies in our society are now just putting it out there, and if it's good, you've got the whole of India as your market, and the world actually.
Actually, exactly. And I think that what...
So the employment side of that, last thing, often it doesn't have to be skilled. The producers, the logistics people, the producers don't have to be that skilled.
Yeah, true. And the way it works is that some sectors are the kind of propel you, but lots of ancillary sectors develop, which is what we're talking about. This is what Albert Hirschman called the backward and forward linkages. Some sectors take off, but they generate a lot of potential elsewhere. And of course, the other point that you're making, which is very important, is that this is kind of like the kind of democratization that technology brings about, right? And it's democratization in an economic sense. It breaks down barriers to entry, because in this, all you need is Flipkart, the server,
and you just put it on there, and from your phone, take a photograph, take it off. You don't have to go to some boss of a
to get a license
mall and say, can I have my product, please? And he says, go to the back of the line.
Exactly.